Hello, welcome back to Photography Out Loud. My name is Paul Davis, and as always, I'm joined with my colleague Joel Longbone. Don't know if
Hello.
How right? That's got to be.
You've done how many episodes?
Yeah, but like, since when have I not? That's the first muck up that I've done. Muck up. Oh, just absolutely setting the pace for.
At least you wrote. At
this
least you
evening's
used the right
episode.
letters in that one.
Oh,
That could have gone horribly wrong.
yeah. Right, just straight out apology. If anyone's ever seen, you know what? If anyone's not seen Photography Out Loud before, this normally we have a slight bit of more professionalism to us.
Do we?
That's a lie as well. No, so just whatever the pace is.
Show have you been watching?
What are we supposed to watch it?
Yeah. Oh goodness me! Well, it's good to see you, whether you know my name or not, mate.
Yeah, it's good to see you as well, Joel. Good to see you as well, and thank you for tuning in live as well. No. Hopefully, that's going to change.
I don't think I've seen you in person for like 10 days, maybe longer. Or have I seen you in person and I've just forgotten?
I think this whole thing's getting to you, Joel.
I didn't see you on Tuesday. I didn't see you yesterday. So it must have been like 2 Mondays ago.
So this isn't a show about photography anymore. it's a whole hour's worth of
trying to remember things. Oh dear. It's the only way you can like figure out time. I haven't seen people in so long. Like 2020 is just like I didn't see anybody in 2020. Just
not a soul.
Well, even when I moved away from home, I saw my parents more than I did in 2020 when I went to university. It's ridiculous. Oh dear. Oh well, there we go. Right, anyway, some of the comments.
Let's get on. Let's have a look at some of the comments before we go down another rabbit hole that we shouldn't do.
Yeah. I think that podcast idea we were talking about earlier is definitely going to have to happen, isn't it? David Yeoman says, "Good afternoon." Joel still has no heating in his house. I do. I don't know. I'm just quite enjoying wearing hoodies and jackets and coats at the moment. So yeah, but yeah, I am quite a thingy about keeping the heat down in the house and wearing more layers. I don't know why. Maybe it's just because I want to save the planet or save pennies. Maybe both. Who knows? So Snowden Curtis says, "Good afternoon. I'm going to be catching what you're getting in a minute. Just not being able to say my words properly." Hi guys, Paul. Have you been drinking? Probably. It is Friday. That's a HR conversation. Paul, stop drinking so early in the day on a Friday. Ian says, "Hi, Paul and Joel. Hello." And Chris says, "Can't tell who is who with their matching beards." I don't know. Like this one's still got a bit of ways to go compared to Paul. Like Paul's been working on his for like a decade, and mine's not quite a year old yet. Talking about it like it's a child. I think it's about 10 months old. I think my daughter is 2 or 3 months older than my beard.
Still in the nurturing stage, then.
Yeah, exactly. So Graham says professional. Yeah, you must be watching the wrong video as well. It's Tuesday date night. Amazing.
No,
for the record. But I can see why you'd think that. No, it's because Tuesday. Oh yeah, Paul would normally be in the shop on Tuesday morning, but he had a job to do. Well, another job. Just have a job. And so I went into the shop to cover the phones and things like that. That's why I was thinking I would have seen him normally, because when I would go into the shop, I see him. Right, that took an awful lot of explanation. Oh yeah, I did see you, Graham. It was good to see you. It was weird seeing like customers in the flesh, especially ones that live a bit further away. But it was good to see you. I'm not so sure I flogged you an expensive filter. I may have suggested it, and you thought it was a good idea, which it was, because you've not sent it back. And then Martin says, "Hi guys, I hope you're keeping well." We are. Well, I am. I don't know. Are you keeping well, Paul?
Oh yes.
Good. No, it's really good to see you all. Thank you for joining us, despite the fact that we can't talk properly. Oh, Paul, straight into the news before we crack on with our other part today. Next week, we have a special guest, James from Fuji. He's going to be talking to us about XE4, 70-300, 27mm WR, GFX 100S, and an 80mm GF 1.7, which our demo one is arriving. Yeah, it's been released recently. But we are getting hopefully a demo model to play with for a few days of the GFX 100S and the 80mm. So all being well, and if the stars align just correctly, one of us will go out and shoot some images, and then we're going to put it through its paces by printing it on Thor, which, if you've not been watching this show, is our Canon Pro 4100, which is 44 inches wide. So yeah, I think we're going to probably do at least one print, maybe more, depending on if we get any decent ones. And we'll be able to show you how big. Well, you better be able to. We'll show you the quality and how big you can print with a GFX 100 S, because 44 inches wide is quite a large print. Yeah, by anybody's standard. So it'd be interesting to see that and the quality. James is very knowledgeable about technical things, so if you have any technical questions, he's definitely the person to ask.
And I think we've got some questions from when Paul came on as well. So we've reserved some of the questions that when Paul Sanders was here and weren't quite sort of the technical questions that I don't even think we could even sort of broach on as well. So it's just a case of, well, James is coming in, so we'll reserve them for James, and he can answer them. So if anyone was watching and was interested in some of the more technical side of things, tuning in next week is going to be a great opportunity to answer some of those questions as well. So can he wait? It's going to be great.
And then the week after, we've got Canon ambassador Sanjay Jogya. I hope I pronounced his surname properly. Really nice bloke. Paul and I got to chat with him yesterday. Really, really nice bloke, and produces some stunning images. And he's really into printing as well. So he kind of does the whole thing, which is really interesting. So definitely don't miss out on that one. That's in 2 weeks' time. So the next 2 weeks, we've got 2 special guests, one each week, which is exciting. Also in the news, for you Nikon fans who may have bought new Nikon mirrorless or Nikon DSLRs, NX Studio has been released, which is Nikon's take on editing software. So it's a bit like Lightroom, a bit like Capture One, but it's specifically for Nikon. So, and that's completely free. So go and check out the Nikon website and download that. So if you're into, or you want to try out a new one, or you're just getting into it and you need a RAW converter, which we'll talk about later, then the NX Studio, whilst I've not tried it because I don't have a Nikon camera, I imagine it's pretty good. The reviews seem to be doing pretty well so far. So might be worth some of you having a look if you're Nikon users. So,
and I think they've taken, like View NX, which is their sort of their software that they've been using as their free sort of browser software, and taken some things from the sort of Capture NX side of things as well, and then sort of made that into a nice free software that is available as well. So great analogy there, Joel, as well with the hands. I like that. just before we move on, because I know there's not a lot of new sort of stuff coming out. There is something that I don't know, like whether we missed or whether it's not on our radar. But I was browsing online, as you do, and I came across this new Sony phone that's coming out, and I thought, all right, I'll have a look at this, see what it's all about. I was absolutely stunned, mate, because I think I got drawn in by the advert to start with. I'm a sucker for like adverts on any social media platforms. I was like, phone for photographers. Yeah, I wanted to have a look at this. The new series that Sony have brought out, they basically put an A9 into a phone.
How is that physically possible, given the A9 is a full frame sensor?
Yeah, so I don't mean like full frame or anything like that, but you know the technology that's inside the A9?
The insane technology that's inside the A9.
Yeah, exactly. So things like the 20 frames per second, the way that it focuses. So, you know, you've got your edge-to-edge focusing, you've got the face detection, eye detection. So all of those things, even with on the continuous shooting mode, it's got the focusing in between the shots. They've put all that into the new, and I think it's the it's S5 and Mark II, and then the One Mark II. I need to check the models, but just absolutely insane. And not only that, is that they've put the Zeiss T-Star lenses on the front of it as well. So,
are you saying that people should stop buying cameras from us and buy phones instead?
That's also another question that I wanted to ask all these lovely people watching as well. Whether you're watching live or whether you're watching this back at any point, stick in the comments whether Cambrian actually needs to sell mobile phones now. Because
it's quite a question.
Yeah, is it the way that things are going? I mean, you've still got the whole mobile phone thing, so it's 3 different lenses on it, and they're really, really tiny lenses because it's still got a tiny sensor on it. But you know, you've got proper Zeiss sort of lens on the front of it as well. And rumored as well, looking on Twitter, is that Sony are going to be announcing part of their the 1-inch chip side of things, that they're going to be producing the 1-inch chip for mobile phones as well. There's still officially nothing been announced, but
that's going to be like having an RX 100 in a phone, which is amazing. I've got an RX 100 Mark VI, and it's a fantastic camera, especially with the zoom. Obviously, I don't think they're going to be putting the zoom on that camera on that phone, but it does make you wonder, doesn't it, where the lines will be and whether a camera shop will have to start selling phones, because Samsung did a while back, didn't they? They decided to make a camera that used Android as its operating system.
Yeah, which was awful.
Yeah,
it was really bad. No, I think
you could measure the speed in minutes, pressing the button to change an option, and then like 2 minutes later, I remember a customer coming in and saying, "Oh, I'd like to buy the Samsung," and I said, "I don't think you do." And he went, "What do you mean?" And I said, "It's awful."
You've got it right there. I want to buy it. No, you don't.
I'd really prefer not to sell it to you because it's just going to come back. Which goes to prove that we don't just sell to make money. We sell because we want to make our customers happy. Because I lost a sale that day because I didn't want to sell that awful camera to the man. But I was also reading about Samsung bringing out new sensor technology, which means that the pixels have been like locked in more. So the light coming into the pixel bounces around, but doesn't get lost into any of the other pixels, which currently happens. So you get kind of color or light bleed. So now they're more like siloed, and they've also changed the reflective material inside each pixel block. So that the light is less likely to escape again. So you get even better color, and you get better low light performance out of a pixel that's smaller. So arguably, sensors can be either more densely packed with pixels, so a higher pixel count, but still good low light performance, or you can get a much smaller sensor with the same amount of pixels as a bigger sensor with great color rendition and great light gathering qualities, which is interesting because if that's true, then surely technology will get even better on sensors with larger pixels, because that technology can obviously be passed along. So, like, I would argue phones will always chase a proper camera sensor. Like, there'll always be a bigger 100%. Sensor will always be better than like a phone will. So it's interesting to see, because obviously they're trying to compact everything down to fit in a phone. So it'll be interesting to see where that gets to. But then what does that mean for bigger sensors? Now that you can get a GFX 100S with a sensor that's like this big inside a body that's smaller than like a traditional DSLR. Let's quickly go to the comments. Gareth says, good afternoon, guys. And he says, I have one of the Sony Xperia 1 Mark II. How is it? Let us know in the comments. Snowden says, just Olympus cameras. Okay. I think we'll miss out on some of our other people who want to buy other brands, but we definitely still like our Olympus cameras. My Panasonic Compact TZ90 cameras packed up, hardly used. I suppose, but that's because you've got other cameras. The TZ90 and the 95 and the 80, still really popular cameras. People still buy a lot of them from us. Great little compacts, great zoom and things. David Yeoman says, it's when phones get liquid lenses, it will start to get interesting. By changing the current voltage, you can alter focal length and aperture of the lens, very fast response time, and can be very compact. Watch this space. Interesting you say that, because, and he's put a link if anybody's interested. I was also reading about a sensor that it's only working in infrared or ultraviolet at the moment, but it's a sensor that heats up, very localized, so it can alter the focus based on the heat of the stuff that sits on the sensor. David will probably know more about it than me if he's read about it. But it was really interesting because you could focus without having any physical glass. And also because of the way it works, you wouldn't have any of the aberration issues that you perhaps would get with glass. But they were saying that obviously this is still theoretical because it was a guy from MIT. And they're only working in certain, I can't remember if it's UV or infrared, but one part of the
wavelengths.
But the fact that it would have to cool down before it could revert back to the focal length it was at beforehand,
right?
Which is interesting. But again, maybe it goes along with like that liquid lens and the focus of it, because the focus would be almost instantaneous because it just apply that heat. And the heat would only have to be very small because this is like, I don't know whether it's atom level, but it's very, very like small. So it's interesting.
It won't be technology that's been put into an R5 then? Oh.
No. Savage. I'm telling John.
I know. And after John's been so nice as well.
Yeah.
Sorry, John.
Interestingly as well, I was speaking to a customer about computational photography and how cameras will get smarter, and we were talking about how it'd be interesting if the interaction with your camera could be better integrated with like a phone or an iPad or a tablet or even your laptop, just the same way as your car can have CarPlay, and so you can add more functionality to your car through your mobile device. So could you imagine an R5, for instance, or an XT4 or whatever? You could change your colors, so like the picture style on your phone and apply it to your camera, or you could download one, Peter McKinnon or some other like photographer that you really like the style of, and install that, or alert for videos, so lookup table and preset for it. And so then you'd be able to take pictures based on almost, you've already edited your image before you've taken it. Like, because Fuji is really good at that. Like most people who buy Fujis like the retro style of it, and also like the color science and the fact that you get Eterna for your video and Astia or classic Chrome or whatever. And it'd be interesting to if you could edit that or like add them yourself and it would just integrate. Like I think that would be amazing for a camera to be able to do that, because that's arguably really easy to do on your phone now, isn't it? Instagram will stick a filter over your thing and just crack on. But imagine doing that on a RAW file straight off the bat.
I don't think we're too far away from that technology, though, to be honest, Joel.
Is it going to be proprietary? Is it going to be proprietary, or will they come up with like this way of just anybody being able to do it?
No, it's going to, camera gear and manufacturers and stuff, they just love keeping it. So, it'll be a race in-house with like Sony, Canon. It'll be something that they include into the app that they do. There's someone at the app center at Sony now writing all this down. What you've done. Like, that's a good idea, that. I've got a meeting next week.
Funny that you say Sony, because Sony just got rid of their applications, didn't they? You used to be able to download little applications that would sit on the camera, like intervalometers and stuff like that, and they were really clunky. But it'd be interesting if they did a good job.
Into the app now, though, into the Edge app. So that's
you can't
they've just made it more uniform.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see how that develops, because when we were talking at the show, we were talking about how come your phone can take a better looking picture than your camera can. Yeah, straight off the bat, like that's it's odd, isn't it? That your phone can take a better picture than a camera, or it looks better until you zoom into it and then it looks blooming awful.
Yeah, falls apart. Right, just some final comments and then we'll jump into some.
So Sonia says, "Thank you for my new 100 to 400 lens. Happy. You're welcome. That's the new Olympus 100-400. It's just started dribbling in to stop, which was good. There we go. David says, Joel, that will work, but your dynamic range will change as it heats up, cools down. Yeah, and also, would that be offsettable, if that's a word? So could the camera have software that would understand that the color shifts or your dynamic range shifts and be able to like counter that? I don't know. It'd be interesting to know like what the science behind that would be. But that's quite a ways away, given it's still at MIT and they're still working in one wavelength. So yeah, Samsung did a camera with an Android tablet on the back, NX series. That's the exact camera we're talking about, because they did the interchangeable one and they did the kind of compact with a massive screen on the back. And the idea was fantastic. The execution was
just wasn't ready. Wasn't quick enough.
Also, it's interesting to know whether Sony will ever bring back their lenses with zoom that clipped onto your phone. I can't remember what that series was called, and it had a little SD card in. But that's quite a good idea, to be able to add the functionality of a lens, a big lens, to your phone. And it was very compact. So
they still actually do them, Joel, by the way.
Do they really?
Yeah, it's the RXO, I think. Yeah.
The RXO is like their GoPro, isn't it?
Yeah, but they do an attachment that goes onto your phone, and then with NFC technology, it connects into the Edge app, and then anyway. Carry on.
David Yeoman says global shutter will be the next stage in technology. Yeah. Sensors already exist. Another watch this space. Yes. I was having a conversation with somebody about shutters, because leaf shutters are amazing. They're quite old, but they're expensive. And I can only really think of one that's in like the mainstream, which is the X100 series. Like they all have leaf shutters, which gives you great control when you've got like flash and stuff like that, because you get you can get faster speeds. But global shutter will be very interesting for sure. Well, we should get into that with David, right? David, this is an episode for the future where we'll get you on and you can talk with us about sense technology, which I love.
Geek off.
Yeah, because David knows that a few years back when I met him in the shop and I found out what he did for a job, that I don't think I shut up about sensor technology for probably half an hour to an hour. But David's very, very knowledgeable, and it's amazing to hear what's available in sensor technology already.
Also, as well, we can give people fair warning that we're going into a
Yeah.
very techie episode as well. So for people that want to join, they can do. But then, considering that I like how we've gone super techie already, and the episode is called Beginners Photography Lesson.
That's true.
So if anyone's holding on, so we haven't started the training yet. This is just the news section, which once again me and Joel have sort of prowled off into a very black hole. And joining us is David Yeoman. So, no, it's brilliant. Any more comments before we jump into some training?
No, hopefully David will come back to us with an agreement to do a show with us about it.
No, that's fantastic. Well, yeah, I think that's all wrapped up for the news, and thank you for your wonderful comments and feedback. It's always nice to see. So I think we'll get on with some training. Hello, welcome back to the training session of Photography Out Loud. Still not quite sure how I'm introducing this section yet, but there we go. If you're just joining us, my name is Paul Davis and joined with my colleague Joel Longbone. So last time we did some training, we looked at the different ways that you can focus your camera, so the how and the why. If you're interested in that, you can rewatch that at any time, so you can go back on our Facebook and YouTube and have a look at that as well. And I think at some point we'll be putting them into a playlist as well, so you'll be able to watch them all in a row as well. But yeah, today what we wanted to do is before we start pushing on a little bit more with more of the fundamentals of photography, we wanted just to finish off on the things that you sort of can do in the camera, or some of the settings that you might be able to change as well. So today we're going to be looking at a couple of those things. And I think the first thing that we're going to start with as well, visible pencil in my hand, is one of the questions that I think we get asked a lot about in the shop when people come into us as well. So it's one of the things that you can change when you're on a automatic mode, but does get asked a lot as far as a question. And I think that first thing is the different file types that you can actually use within the camera as well. So let me just share my screen. There we go.
Everybody loves talking about JPEG versus RAW.
Yeah, so and it's something that we can definitely get into. And obviously, if you've got any questions about sort of file types as well, you can always drop them into the comments. If you're watching live, then we'll answer them live. If you're watching a recorded version of this, then you can still comment and we can get to them sort of, we can message you back or something like that. That's absolutely fine. So there's two different main types of file formats that you can choose inside your camera. Some digital cameras, phones, what have you, they might be able to do slightly different things, but generally what we find is that there's two main types. First, we're going to have a look at the first one, which is a JPEG. It's the most common, and it's been sort of fairly uniformed throughout the industry as well, hasn't it, Joel?
Yeah, for probably, 15 years? 20 years, maybe? Yeah, it's definitely a really good, useful file format, given that compared to RAW, which we'll see later on, it's more universally viewable. So you can see it on almost anything, whereas something we'll come to on RAW is that you can't always view a RAW without special software. So JPEG is fantastic because, one, it's small, or relatively small in terms of megabyte size, and you can change the resolution quite easily as well, which is very useful as well. So
yeah, and I think the really nice thing, and it's definitely overlooked if you've been doing any research on things like, what file format should I pick or anything like that. I think one of the most overlooked thing is that it's called various different names. Lots of different people call it different things, but there's a picture style built into any mobile phone, any compact camera, any sort of full frame camera if you're using one of those. And what these are is the color of the picture, what it actually looks like on your camera. Now, when you shoot JPEG, this is actually sort of pushed into the file that you actually have. So, for instance, the best way of explaining this is that if you put your camera onto a black and white mode, the picture will be black and white. Or if you added an effect or a filter that's built in, like a digital filter, then that will be applied, and that's the photo that you're actually going to get. So it fancies up the picture for you. So it actually makes it great for using a picture straight out the camera. And that's one of the real benefits of using a JPEG, I find. Moving on to, before jumping ahead a little bit. So when it comes to shooting JPEG and once again, it gets a little bit confusing into these two different things, which is the file size and the image quality itself. So the file size is how big your picture is. So how many actual pixels that you're using. So depending on your camera, some cameras have more or some cameras have less pixels than others. But in the JPEG settings, in the settings of your camera, you're able to decide the image size or how large the file is. And this is basically how many pixels that you're using. And generally, it's not much of an issue nowadays because we've got memory cards that you can get super big capacities. So there's very little that you would need to sort of put in a small memory card and reduce the size down if this became a problem, but they're still available in the menu system. So typically what you want to do is you want to have obviously a large file size, so you're using all those pixels, but more importantly is the quality. And in some respects, this is more important than the actual image size itself. The quality is how you look after those pixels. So if you wanted to use this in an analogy or something, I like to see it as, if we're placing a load of beads into a bowl, and the quality itself is how carefully we're putting those beads into a bowl. Am I just going to pick them up and just slam them into a bowl, and then some of the beads might get broken or potentially fall out of the bowl? If we do this a very fine way, so a fine quality, place them in finely into the bowl, then nothing happens too much to the actual pixels themselves, keeping the quality there. If you reduce the quality of your pixels down, you're not looking after your pixels the way that you should do. So you're wanting to make sure that your image quality when shooting JPEG is absolutely on the highest. And if you did have any issues with file storage on the memory cards, our first advice would probably be buying of a memory card. They're very inexpensive nowadays. That would be the first port of call. But if you needed to save space, then we would actually suggest moving the image quality down before changing, the image size before changing the quality down. Hopefully that made sense. Joel's gone. I don't know where he's gone. I've just looked at the screen now and disappeared. Right, let's carry on. So what we're wanting to look at next is the RAW file format. So what RAW essentially is uncompressed. It's the original information captured. And this is going to give us the highest quality possible. And what it will also do, more importantly, is give you more adjustment in post-processing. So you're able to actually alter things like your white balance, exposure, contrast, saturation, sharpness, all of those lovely things afterwards, and still retain that high level of quality that you want. And the only thing you need to bear in mind with RAW is that the file sizes are going to be a lot bigger. So obviously you're going to need bigger memory cards, but it's going to take a little bit more sort of on your computer as well. So you need to make sure that you've got things like external hard drives ready, set up, ready to go. And the other thing as well is that you need to remember when shooting RAW is that every RAW photo that you take, you need to make sure, well, there isn't any other option. You'll need to edit that photo, okay? So if you love taking thousands and thousands of photographs, you'll need to edit thousands and thousands of photographs. So you need to be very cautious of when to actually use RAW. Every picture that you take in RAW needs to be edited. It just needs to go through an editing process. So typically what I do is I normally shoot RAW, but when we're allowed, when we go on holidays, I generally revert back to JPEGs, because these are going to be pictures that I'm probably not going to edit. They're going to be just fine coming straight out the camera. So I'll leave those on JPEG. And then when I go out, when I wanted to do some professional work, or whether I wanted to do some landscapes, well, I'm not taking too many photographs for landscapes. What I can then do is I can use RAW and then enjoy myself editing the pictures when I come back at the computer, but they do need to be edited. One of the other things that we can change in the camera is our flash setting. So this is something that we can once again change when we're on a automatic mode. So whether you've got a mobile phone, compact camera, or DSLR, mirrorless, whatever you've got. Typically what you'll find is that all of these type of cameras, they come with some sort of built-in flash. And most of the time, this is set to a automatic mode. So what you might find is that the flash is sometimes going to come on and sometimes not going to come on, or sometimes flash, or sometimes not flash. Now, the reason why we mention this is it's a great tool to play about with. Something while you're at home and you're wanting to sort of experiment with your camera a little bit. Turning the flash on and turning the flash off is going to give you really different effects. So it's something that is really good for trying out. What you'll find with more modern cameras is that they're able to do a better photo now, or a better looking photo without the flash off, and it's going to use the ambient light in the room to take that photograph. Flash is obviously using a small flash of light coming from your camera, and it's only coming from a single direction, so it can have that sort of very stark flash.
You're caught in the headlights, look.
Yeah. Oh, you're back, are you?
Yeah.
Nice for you to join us.
My apologies. My
I didn't
son
even know you
decided
went.
he was very hungry.
I didn't even know you disappeared because I've got the presentation in front of me.
Oh. The other great thing about automatic flash is some cameras will either do it automatically or they'll offer it as red eye reduction as well, so you don't get the devil eyes. That's really useful. Yeah, I think flash is one of those things where I think of it less about low light environments and more about if there's strong light behind somebody's head and I want to be able to fill their face with a bit of light. But,
yeah, and it's something that you can definitely experiment with as well, isn't it? So it's why we wanted to mention it, because you will get really different effects with turning the built-in flash on and off, and have a play, see which you prefer. And it's going to be different for everything that you take a picture of as well. So it's something just to bear in mind that you have got it there. It's something that you can switch on and off while still remaining on an automatic mode as well. One of the other things that we get asked quite a lot of is, how do I take, continuous bursts of things, and what are the different options and what do the symbols mean? So once again, cameras, mobile phones, blah, 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 blah. They all have a drive mode built into them. Now, this can be named in various different ways. So some manufacturers call it drive mode, burst mode, shooting mode. Some might even call it continuous shooting mode. But essentially what this is telling us is that it's what happens when we take the picture. So when I go through what we did last week, so we go through the half pressure to focus, and then as we push down all the way on our shutter button, what happens then? Is it going to take one shot, or is it going to take continuous shots? And what you'll find now is that we can set this to either do one, we can either do a burst of low, which is maybe a couple within a second. And then also you will have a high burst mode as well. And there's no point throwing out numbers there, because this is really, really different for every camera that's actually out there. It depends on what it can actually do. But you will find that you'll have a low, you'll have a high, and then even on some cameras, they actually use the technology of 4K. And once again, this is just a name, but it will take even more photographs, so 25 pictures within a second, but with the quality slightly reduced to get them into the shot. And also what you do with, yeah, go on.
Also, something to remember with these modes, and this will be very particular to your camera, is that some of these drive modes will, if you've got it set to continuous autofocus or whatever the phraseology is for your camera, that in low or medium burst modes, the autofocus will still work, but on some of the higher ones, it will forego being able to autofocus, so that you can maybe manually focus, but then you might get 60 frames per second, which is absurd, because that's like high frame rate video. So that's something to consider, is look in your manual or give us a shout or YouTube or Google it and find out which mode will still use autofocus, because you might be relying on capturing a bird flying by, and you've put it in super high burst mode, and it won't actually track focus it. But if you drop down one level, then it'll get it in focus and it'll be fantastic. So it's just something to consider when you're choosing which burst mode to use. So yeah, and what you'll find also within this mode is that you're able to set this little funny symbol that we've got on the screen, which is it's supposed to be a clock. So I don't know, like, is it like a universal symbol for a clock? Is that what? Like, yeah, maybe. I'm sure there's other things. Yeah, but in the photographic industry, this is it's always been this symbol as well. So from like when I first back in there. And how old are you, Paul? If that was that long ago? Well, haven't we decided that we're 75 years old this year? Yeah, that's true. So, and then it was an actual mechanical clock that did the timer. Yeah, indeed. Like a clockwork. So the reason why we still have this, and I think one of the modes that is probably used more than the other is probably the 2-second self timer. So the one that's got a 2 next to it is it's actually great for when you're on a wobbly tripod. So if you wanted to do some tripod work, then the 2-second self timer is great, because you push the button, there'll be a bit of wobble when you push the shutter button down. And by the time 2 seconds are gone, that wobble has stopped, basically, which is quite nice. If you do have that issue, give us a shout so we can sell you a decent tripod. Yeah. And then I don't think any camera would be complete if it didn't have a 10-second self timer. So you could set it up, and it's group shot mode. It certainly is. It certainly is. When that's the thing again. Yeah. Socially distanced group shot modes. Or you want to take your own selfie that doesn't include your arm. Yeah. So I think it is it's a lost type of photograph as well. You know, it's definitely something people should try. Once you're together again, rather than doing that sort of the arm look. Stick your camera down, stick it on a self timer, and do it that way. Old school. Have a play. It's part of the learning experience that we're doing here as well. So have a good play. I think I pushed the button twice, so it might move on to the next slide. Yep, it has done. Goodness me, that's quite a slow catch up, isn't it? It is, and I don't. Yeah, I can go back. Yeah, apologies, everyone. So one of the
the next thing we're going to talk about is white balance. Now, before I talk about white balance, what I will say is that the auto white balance is very good. And actually, a lot of the time, I leave it on auto. And what we were talking about before with the RAW is that your white balance is one of the things that you have complete adjustment over when you're shooting RAW as well. So you can, if you're shooting in RAW, then you can decide the overall color of the photograph after the picture's been taken, because all the color spectrum has been photographed when you've been taking it. So you can choose your color afterwards. Saying that, there are times when the auto white balance doesn't quite get it right. And what you may want to do is you may want to use one of the presets built into the camera to try and make your picture look a bit as you see it, okay? The main thing here, and it'll come on when we go on to the next bit as well, which we're going to start looking at exposure, is that there's two things to look at. There is how you want the picture to be or how it is in real life. And it depends on what you're trying to capture as well. What is in your head? What is the picture that you want? Essentially, what you see when you've taken the picture, or if you're on a modern camera, what you see before you take your picture, so on like a mirrorless camera or a compact camera, just making sure that you're happy with it. So if there is a slight warmness to the picture and you say, oh, I quite like that, then there's nothing wrong with the white balance. It's just you prefer it that way. If you wanted it to look a bit different, then use one of the presets within the white balance and it's going to change the color of your photograph. So this is one way of changing the color of your photograph very, very quickly and easily. And you don't actually need to use, the tungsten under tungsten lighting, the daylight under daylight lighting. You can see what these different effects are going to give you under any different conditions, and they will change it. And once again, just have a play with these modes and see what different effects that you're going to get. But it's, once again, if we were recommending a setting to use, we would 90% always recommend the auto mode. It does a very, very good job of picking the right type of color for you.
The other great thing to play with white balance, to understand how it works and why it works, is if you ever are taking a picture of a sunset or a sunrise, go through your white balance icons and see how it'll warm up the sunset or cool it down. It's quite good if you want a kind of cheats way of making your sunset look even warmer and more rich and vibrant, is by playing around with your white balance to get that right. I think white balance is one of those things where most people only really notice it on skin tones. Where or something quite obvious like a white background or something where it looks blue or it looks orange. So yeah, it's definitely, like Paul was saying, the auto white balance functionality is fantastic. And in RAW, you may as well not even bother with white balance. I know I don't. I think the only time I ever play with white balance is if I know I want to shoot JPEG and I want it to look bang on straight off, like just straight away. Like otherwise, I don't even think about white balance. I probably don't even know where the white balance option is on most of my cameras, to be honest.
No, that's brilliant. And obviously when, and it's mainly photography as well, but it really helps sort of picking one of these if you're doing a bit of video as well. So having sort of a white balance set when doing video, because there's less chance of doing editing sort of afterwards on a video as far as when it comes to color. So that's just something to bear in mind as well. But yeah, your white balance, auto white balance, really, really good for most of the time. So the last thing I wanted to talk about today was delving a little bit into the exposure side of things. So it's the first time that we've used the word exposure and within the training session. And what exposure means to start with is the light coming into the camera. So we're exposing light to the camera. That's where the terminology comes from. And compensation is just a fancy word for changing things. So, but exposure compensation is probably one of the most useful features on your camera. So you've got the other things that we talked about. So using the zoom, which we talked about in a previous session, is really, really important. Picking the zoom that you want to, knowing how your camera focuses to make sure that you get a nice sharp photograph, and then using exposure compensation to get the right look to your picture. So whether it's going to look a bit brighter or a bit darker than what the camera thinks. Now, exposure compensation is really, really easy to use. Essentially, what we're going to be doing is we can add light to the picture by moving to the plus side of it. So what you're needing to do to start with is find this little symbol that is, I'm pointing the wrong way, aren't I? It's about there on the screen. So Joel's silent laugh there. You've muted yourself, mate, have you?
The funny yin yang sign.
Yeah, the funny yin yang. So this is the symbol that you need to find. On some cameras, it might be actually physically on top of the camera as well, like it is on mine. But this is the symbol that we're looking for. And this is the symbol for exposure compensation. Now, when we move to the plus side, what we're doing is that we're adding light to the camera, which is going to make the picture brighter. The way that exposure compensation works is it uses these, once again, numbers that we haven't quite talked about yet, which is stops. Now, while in this stage of learning, I don't really want you to worry too much about what the numbers mean, okay? The main thing that you need to just know about for now is that you're moving in the right direction that you want to, okay? So the numbers are just a way of referencing how much brightness or how dark you're going to make the photo.
Imagine it being like a volume control on the stereo,
100%.
and all you see is a number, and you don't know any of the decibels. Like you don't understand whether it's 2 decibels, 4 decibels, 5 decibels. It literally is just, I don't know, 0 to 50, and you just want it to be medium loud, so you turn it up to 25. Or if you want it really loud, you turn it up to 50.
You know what? That's the best analogy I've had on these numbers before. So we will go a little bit more into sort of how these numbers and how they relate to other things. But just for now, is making sure that you are actually moving in the right direction. So moving to the plus side or to the add side is going to be adding light to your picture, making your picture darker, and then moving to the opposite side.
Brighter, you meant.
Yeah, thank you, Joel. So moving to the plus is going to make your picture brighter, and then moving to the minus, so the takeaway symbol, is going to make your picture darker, taking away the light from your photo. Did I say that right that time?
Yeah.
That's all right then. So,
I think you were preparing for talking about the minus one.
I think I was, yeah.
Your brain works faster than your mouth sometimes.
Yeah, that's just, I don't even know what to say to that, Joel.
Yeah. You're just super clever, Paul. You just think faster than your mouth can keep up with.
I really don't think that's the reason, but we'll go with that. We'll go with that. So just to recap over the things that we've talked about today, is you've got your file formats. So JPEG is smaller, a lot easier to deal with. So we can take the memory card straight out to the camera. We can shove it into a printer and it'll work. We can email a picture straight away, send it to a mobile phone straight away. Totally
upload it to social media.
Yeah, and it also looks better coming straight out the camera because it has that profile that has been applied in camera to make your pictures look better. Then you've got the RAW, which is giving you the highest quality possible that's coming out of the camera. It's going to give you options for editing your photo afterwards. So as we talked about the white balance, we'll be able to change that, along with other things like your exposure. your saturation, all of those lovely things that you can play about within the computer. But you need to remember that you have to edit every raw photo. So if you're taking 3,000 raw photos, you need to edit 3,000 raw photos. So just make sure that you're prepared for doing that.
Or learn to use Lightroom sync mode.
Yeah, you could do that.
Or presets.
So we also looked at changing your flash. So changing your flash settings. Once again, something that you can do on a automatic mode, and will change the effect, especially if your flash is coming on when you don't want it to in darker areas. What you will find with modern cameras now is that they do have the capability of still taking pictures within darker situations. They just generally tend to want to use the flash.
Yeah, it's one of those things. Flash, like I was saying earlier, for me has just become more of a creative way of getting around issues that I find in photography, rather than a way of illuminating a dark room or dark environment. But equally, if you just want the shot, leave in flash and automatic and your camera on automatic mode. Like, they're getting more and more intelligent and they can balance things out much more easily. So if you just want the shot, then full auto on everything and it'll just work. But I think it's really useful, especially when you get into photography more and more, is to understand how you can use flash to get even better pictures and it not look like you've just seen a rabbit cross in front of your car and that just go and be really bright and not attractive at all. But equally, that harsh thing is what kind of makes gig photography look interesting and stuff like that, is that kind of harshness of the light. And also there's a street photographer who uses flash. I was watching a video. Is it Dougie somebody? But he uses flash to get that, so he can use a higher shutter speed and just get that kind of really garish look. So yeah, it's cool.
So there's lots of different ways that you can use it in. There is the burst mode as well, which you can use if there's a lot going on and you need to record multiple frames within a certain second. Then there is the burst mode that is built into the camera that is enabling you to take multiple shots within a second. And we can also add self-timer modes to this as well. The white balance for controlling your color in your camera, if you're shooting in JPEG, then you can set this and once again play about with it. Find that sunrise, go through the different settings and see what effects that you're going to get. Then also have a real good play with exposure compensation, because making your picture lighter and darker is something that is constantly something that you'll want to do, part of a creative process. 100%. We'll go a little bit more into it probably in the next episode, of how and why the camera sees what it sees. But the camera will see something and you see something differently. So using exposure compensation is a really quick, an easy way of you coming to some sort of agreement with your camera. So that's what it's really, really good for. It's just that agreement. Which
I like that. Right, you and me, camera, we're coming to an accord on this.
Yeah.
Oh dear.
I was going to go into politics then, but that's like live murder. That
is, we'll leave that one there.
I'm not even going to touch that. Just leave that right there. Leave that right there. So that concludes the training session for this week. I don't think we've had any sort of questions come through.
There's a few comments.
Yeah,
I'll just have a quick look. So we've got Jerry Painter. Hello, Jerry. With the capacity of cards now, it's perfectly acceptable to shoot both raw and large JPEG. 100% agree with that, because that's what I spend my life doing. I very much use that with my Fuji, because I really like the colors that Fuji have in their JPEGs, their JPEG picture styles. But I like to have that raw capability just in case I got the exposure wrong or I need to tweak the white balance or whatever. It's very useful. This gives you the option of quickly selecting an image to pass on, but with the flexibility of editing that RAW provides. Definitely agree with that. The basic edit for RAW images is to start by applying the settings on your JPEG version in bulk with Lightroom, etc. Using a large JPEG also allows you to zoom in to 100% in camera. The JPEG produced within all RAW files for viewing on LCD is only 50%. That might be camera specific, I think. But.
Yeah, you know what, Jerry? Absolutely spot on comment there. I totally sort of didn't mention that you can shoot in both. Both does give you the best of both worlds. It is
one thing you do need to realize is the capacity of cards. Because a RAW and a JPEG, like I was thinking, like the A7 III, RAW files between 50 and 65 meg, and the maybe, and then the JPEGs are probably 24 meg. Yeah, maybe, or it might be that might be a bit higher. Anyway, but you can imagine that you're taking maybe a JPEG and a RAW and a quarter of that, and adding it on again for a JPEG. So each and every time you're using quite a lot of data space on your card to do that. So. And I might be totally wrong with my RAW and JPEG sizes, so don't judge me for it.
Yeah, examples they were. But yeah, I mean, you know, we changed our cameras about this time last year, Joel, and you know, now we're starting to have conversations about the file sizes.
NAS storage.
Yeah, we've just been in like, we're running out of space. We really need to sort this out. So it is just something to bear in mind. Like, you know, on your memory, the memory cards are super cheap, and when you're shooting day to day, it doesn't seem a problem. But I think it does come down to like what you're going to do with the pictures, like all over. Like if you're like us and for some reason keep everything, then you want to think sort of long term of how you're going to look after those pictures.
Part of my personal workflow on stuff for the family is that I will shoot in JPEG and RAW, look through the JPEGs, and if there's nothing too far out in terms of exposure or color, or you know, I'm not going to want to make a larger image out of it, I'll just delete all the RAWs and keep my JPEGs.
Really? You know, I don't delete anything. You know, if I took a picture accidentally of my foot, I'd keep it.
That very first shot on a camera where you forget to take the lens cap off.
That one, as you're looking into the lens as well, just going. No, brilliant.
Debbie says, "Thank you." Yeah, definitely. Thank you, Jerry. So Debbie says, "Thank you." Johnny Mo says, "Afternoon, lads. Likey. Oh, we've missed
always
you,
likey.
Haven't been able to join for a little while, but missed your comedy banter as you explain away. Great overview as always. Thank you, Johnny. It's really encouraging comment. And we've definitely missed your likey, sherry, subscribe. It's got to be a t-shirt. And if we make the t-shirt, Johnny, I expect you to buy the first one. We'll do a limited edition Johnny Mo version. And then Jerry says, I can get 1,599 on each of 2 cards in Fuji X-H1. It's good. Yeah. What capacity card? That'd be interesting to know, because that has a big bearing. But now you can buy 1 or 2 terabyte SD cards.
I know, it's absolutely bonkers. They're not
like the same as a hard drive.
Yeah, they're not the most cost effective at the moment, but just knowing that they're actually available, like I think it's the most cost effective, probably like a 256 at the moment, which is still bonkers, by the way. Yeah, absolutely still bonkers. But just knowing that you can buy like a 1 terabyte, like you said, or a 2 terabyte card it's just nuts. Like my computer only holds like 350 gigs, so it means that my memory card would be storing more than my computer would. Exactly. Absolutely crazy.
Johnny says, I'm just like you, Paul, can't bring myself to delete them. I can imagine Channel 4 bringing a show out in the future for hoarders. Hard drive hoarders. Yeah, you two will be the first to do it. Maybe we should do an episode of it and just go through somebody's like back catalogue of photos going, why is this still here?
Yeah, we should do that once.
Gary Jones says, oops, missed you again, guys. Just switched on. We'll see what I've missed later. No worries. Good to see you, Gary.
I'm John.
Some workshops. as always. And Tina says, on some cameras, you have 2 memory card slots. One you can set to JPEG and the other to RAW. 100% correct, Tina. That's very, very useful. So not only is it for being able to back up, which is very useful for pro photographers, wedding photographers, event photographers, etc., where you can keep a copy of both your JPEGs and RAW on 2 cards. So if one goes bad, it's okay. And then being able to split RAW and JPEG between 2 cards is fantastic, which also brings us on in the future to talk about the card slots, because some card slots are faster on some cameras than others. So.
Yeah, there's always lots to talk about. So just before we finish and just sort of do our normal round down. Okay.
Round up.
Round up. I don't know why.
The weed killers exist.
Yeah. Can I just say thank you for the comments coming in about the training as well, like little bits that I missed. So that's absolutely lovely, and is the reason why we wanted to do it live as well. So like everyone can get involved, and it's the whole spirit about like everyone helping each other as well. So
our community,
we wanted to put this out, for free on our Facebook and YouTube, and just knowing that there's other people out there that want to help as well, just sort of joining in, helping other people, giving that information out that we've potentially sort of overlooked or even missed. It does happen a lot.
Because one of our issues is we know it's for beginners, and we want to obviously make sure it's accessible for beginners. But you guys who have like moved along in your photographic journey, it's so good that you are willing to help out and like bring in little bits that perhaps kind of add that extra level of detail that we weren't sure about or we forgot about. Or it definitely is really encouraging, because ultimately Photography Out Loud is about passionate photography, and you guys helping one another is something we would love. And in the future, when we can get out and about and it's safe to do so, etc., we would love for you guys to all meet up, and we can share experiences together and hints and tips and things as we go out photographing. That's one of our things that we'd love to do with you. So this being in real life is going to be fantastic. So Jerry says just 64 gig, a bit important to get 170 megabits per second to maintain speed of recording. SanDisk are really good. Yeah,
which we'll go into in the future about speeds and stuff. Yeah,
we'll get super geeky on megabits, megabytes, gigabits, gigabytes, and I will also go through in the future workflow of how we both, because we do it separately and differently to one another in terms of how we look after our images and videos. So we'll go in.
Right.
Hey.
Let's just say.
What did you say?
You do it wrong, I do it right.
Oh, right. No. I do it right. You do it wrong.
You know what?
Anyway.
Go on. Go on. Carry on.
We'll go through how to look after your pictures so that you're making the most of your storage space, making the most of being able to find your images quickly and easily, and also how you can keep them safe. So being able to use cloud storage, external hard drives, NAS drives, things like that. Because we want, one of the things that beginning in photography or videography is people don't realize how much space things will take up and how to kind of look after them. It probably comes a bit more naturally when it's physical. So people used to put photographs in their little paper wallets they came from the lab in, or they'd start putting them in their photo albums. And a lot of people just store the pictures on their phones or on their computers and just stick it all over the desktop, and there's no rhyme or reason to how they do it. So we'll definitely be doing a video for that as part of this beginners training, so we can help you guys understand that. Richard says, great video, lads. Cheers, Richard. I'm glad you could join us. And then Johnny Mo is my mentor. He recommended you to me. I'm totally new, and all these little bits help a lot. We're really glad, Debbie. That's great. Thank you, Johnny, as well. Repping for Cambrian and Photography Out Loud.
Debbie,
we're glad the video helped.
Knowing one person out there is taking a little bit of advice from this is making it all worthwhile. So thank you very much. I'm sure there's more, but it's lovely hearing that we are helping at least one person.
Yeah,
so.
definitely.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, it's really
any
good.
final
Thank
thoughts before we break up for the weekend, Joel?
Have a play with the settings we spoke about. Try and use flash creatively, because it does get interesting, especially if it's a nice day tomorrow or Sunday or whenever, and you've got a lot of harsh light, and you've got a subject that's backlit by it. Try using the flash and seeing how that works, because it brings a different dimension to the images that you can make. So, and have a great weekend and stay safe.
Thank you for everyone watching this week's episode of Photography Out Loud. As always, if you can like and share this video as much as you possibly can, anything that you do does help us sort of keep going on with what we love doing here. So all you can do is nope, even put that bit up. All you do is helps us so much. So I'll just leave it there, sort of slightly broken. Just put it there. There we go. little broken ending for you to all admire.
We started in that way and we'll finish that way, Paul?
We certainly will. Yeah. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye for now.
Cheers, everybody. Bye now.